The stars bent and twisted as the Jathreen fleet tore through the fabric of space. 214 warships emerged into normal space with practiced precision, their hulls gleaming like polished obsidian under the light of an unremarkable yellow star. Fleet Commander Talric stood on the bridge of his flagship, watching the third planet slowly rotate on the main display. It looked peaceful from this distance, blue and green and wrapped in white clouds. They always looked peaceful before the invasion began. "Sensor report," Talric commanded, his 3 eyes focused on the tactical display floating before him. Junior Sensor Officer Velik manipulated his console with quick, nervous movements. This was his first conquest mission, and he wanted to perform well. "Initial scans confirm the intelligence reports, Commander. Electromagnetic emissions consistent with early industrial development. Radio waves, primitive satellite networks, no signs of orbital infrastructure or defensive platforms." Talric allowed himself a small smile. Another easy victory for the Dominion. The Jathreen had conquered 17 species in the last 3 centuries, and each conquest followed the same pattern. Find a developing world. Demonstrate overwhelming force. Absorb their resources and population into the Dominion. The humans would be number 18. Begin standard invasion protocol, Talric ordered. Deploy scout formations. Prepare the broadcast message. These primitives need to understand their place in the galactic order. The fleet began to move, spreading into a formation that had intimidated countless worlds. Capital ships in the center, surrounded by layers of cruisers and destroyers with fast attack corvettes forming an outer perimeter. It was beautiful in its precision, a dance of military power that no primitive world could hope to challenge. Velik frowned at his console. A small anomaly flickered on his screen, then disappeared. Probably just stellar interference. He was about to dismiss it when it appeared again, stronger this time. "Commander, I'm detecting a single contact approaching our position. Distance 5 million kilometers and closing. One ship?" Talric's voice carried amusement. "These humans send one ship to meet an armada? How brave. Or how foolish," the bridge crew laughed. One ship against 200. The humans clearly didn't understand what they were facing. Perhaps they meant it as a diplomatic gesture, sending a representative to negotiate the terms of their surrender. "Bring it on screen," Talric said. The view screen shifted, and the laughter died. The human ship looked nothing like the elegant vessels of the Jathreen fleet. Where Jathreen warships flowed with organic curves and artistic design, the human vessel was a brutal block of metal and purpose. Thick armor plates covered every surface. Weapons batteries protruded from the hull like the spines of some deep space predator. There was no beauty in its design, only function and threat. "Size comparison?" Talric asked, his voice less certain now. "It's massive, Commander. 3 times the displacement of our largest capital ship. Dense construction. I'm reading armor plating at least 10 meters thick in some sections." Talric stared at the screen. The intelligence reports had mentioned nothing about warships. The humans were supposed to be primitive, barely capable of reaching their own moon. Yet here was a vessel that looked like it had been built for war and nothing else. "What's its speed?" Velik checked his instruments twice before answering. 0.15 light speed and accelerating. "Commander, that's impossible. No ship that size should be able to move that fast." The human vessel continued its approach, not slowing, not deviating from its course. It was heading straight for the center of the Jathreen formation, straight for Talric's flagship. "Fire a warning shot across their bow," Talric ordered. "Demonstrate our weapons. Make them understand they cannot win." A destroyer on the fleet's edge charged its plasma lances and fired. Superheated plasma screamed across the void, passing within a kilometer of the human ship. A clear message. Stop or be destroyed. The human ship didn't stop. It didn't slow. It didn't change course. "Commander, we're receiving a transmission. Audio and visual. Put it through." The screen changed, and Talric found himself looking at a human for the first time. The creature sat in what appeared to be a command chair, surrounded by tactical displays and crew members working at various stations. The human was old by the look of it, with gray hair and lines around its eyes, but those eyes were sharp and alert, and they didn't show fear. They showed exhaustion and something that looked like annoyance. "This is Admiral James Chen of the Terran Colonial Navy ship Indomitable," the human said. Its voice was calm, almost bored. "You have entered Terran-claimed space without authorization. You are in violation of our territorial boundaries." Talric felt his skin flush with anger. This primitive dared to claim territory. I am Fleet Commander Talrix of the Jothrin Dominion. We claim this system and all its resources in the name of the Dominion. Your world will submit or be destroyed. Those are your only options. The human admiral leaned back in his chair. He looked tired. He looked like someone who had done this before and was tired of repeating himself. I've heard that speech 17 times in the last 50 years, Commander. Let me save us both some time. You have 30 seconds to reverse course and leave this system. If you remain, we will classify you as hostile. If you attack, we will respond with lethal force. One ship against my Armada. Talrix's voice rose. You threaten me? Admiral Chen checked something on a display beside his chair. 20 seconds, Commander. I suggest you use them wisely. The transmission ended. The screen returned to the tactical view of the human battleship. It was still approaching, now less than 2 million kilometers away. Still not slowing. Still not stopping. Talrix felt rage overcome his judgment. This primitive insulted the Dominion, insulted him personally. All ships, combat readiness. Destroyer Squadron 7, disable that vessel. Show these humans what happens when they defy the Dominion. 6 destroyers broke from the formation, their weapons charging as they accelerated toward the human ship. Phalek watched his sensors carefully, waiting for the human vessel to turn and flee. But it didn't turn. It didn't flee. Instead, it opened gun ports along its hull, revealing row after row of weapon batteries. The countdown reached 0, and the war began. The 6 Jothrin destroyers spread into an attack formation, their plasma lances glowing with deadly energy. These weapons had burned through the shields and armor of dozens of species. They had reduced cities to ash and turned warships into expanding clouds of molten metal. Against one ship, even a large one, they would be more than enough. Fire, the squadron commander ordered. Brilliant streams of superheated plasma lanced across space. The human ship made no attempt to dodge. It didn't activate energy shields or deploy defensive screens. It simply took the hit. 6 plasma lances, each capable of melting through 100 meters of standard armor, struck the human battleship's hull dead center. The bridge crew of Talrix's flagship watched in silence. Velik's instruments showed the impact clearly. The temperature readings were off the scale. The armor glowed white-hot, bright enough to hurt the eyes. Any normal ship would have been cut in half. Any normal crew would be dead. The white glow faded. The human ship was still there. Still intact. Still moving forward. Impossible, someone whispered. Velik checked his readings 3 times. The armor was damaged. Whole sections had been melted and scorched. But it had held. The ship had absorbed weapons fire that should have destroyed it, and it was still operational. What are they made of? Talrix demanded. Before anyone could answer, the human ship returned fire. Velik saw the weapons activate, and for a moment he was confused. These weren't plasma lances or particle beams or any energy weapon he recognized. They were kinetic launchers, railguns, physical projectiles accelerated by magnetic force. The Jothrin had used similar weapons thousands of years ago, before discovering energy-based systems. Why would an advanced species still use such primitive technology? The answer came quickly and violently. Tungsten slugs, each weighing several tons, screamed across the void at 30% of light speed. At those velocities, the projectiles carried kinetic energy beyond anything the Jothrin had prepared for. Energy shields were designed to deflect plasma and lasers. They were designed to disperse energy across their surface. They were not designed to stop solid matter moving at relativistic speeds. The first slug hit a destroyer dead center. The energy shield flickered once, then simply failed. The tungsten penetrated the hull like it was paper. The ship exploded from the inside out, torn apart by the kinetic energy transfer. The second slug hit another destroyer's engine section. The ship broke in half, both pieces tumbling through space-trailing atmosphere and debris. Evasive action. The squadron commander screamed, but it was too late. The human ship fired again, and again. Each shot was precise. Each shot was lethal. 2 more destroyers died in seconds. Their hulls punctured and their reactors breached. The remaining 2 tried to retreat, but the human ship was faster than it had any right to be. More railgun fire reached out across the distance, and the destroyers became expanding clouds of wreckage. The entire engagement had lasted 40 seconds. Talrix stood frozen on his bridge, staring at the tactical display. 6 destroyers gone, 6 ships and 300 crew members simply erased from existence. The human ship continued its approach, apparently undamaged by the return fire it had ignored. "New contacts," Velik shouted. "Multiple launches from the human ship." "Missiles inbound," Talrix almost laughed. "Missiles, guided projectiles. Another primitive weapon. The Jothrin point defense systems would handle them easily. All ships engage incoming missiles. Show these humans that we learn from our mistakes." The fleet's defensive batteries opened fire. Laser grids and plasma bursts filled the space between the human ship and the Jothrin formation. The first wave of missiles flew into this wall of fire and most were destroyed. Talrix allowed himself a moment of satisfaction. The humans weren't invincible after all. Then the missiles started dodging. Velik watched in disbelief as the remaining missiles performed maneuvers that should have been impossible. They accelerated and decelerated in ways that would destroy any guidance system. They changed direction without visible thrusters. They moved like living things, like predators hunting through the defensive fire. "Those aren't missiles," Velik said quietly. "Those are intelligent drones." 20 missiles reached the destroyer formations that had moved forward to screen the capital ships. They didn't impact the hulls. Instead, they detonated 10 kilometers away, and Velik's instrument screamed warnings he had never seen before. "Nuclear detonations detected. Extreme radiation levels. X-ray frequency." The missiles were nuclear bombs, but not designed to create explosions. They were designed to channel the energy of a nuclear reaction into focused beams of X-ray radiation. At close range, this radiation cut through energy shields and armor like they didn't exist. It cooked electronics. It flash-heated hull plating until it vaporized. It killed crew members through meters of shielding. 4 more destroyers died. 3 cruisers were crippled, their systems fried and their crews exposed to lethal radiation. A frigate simply broke apart, its structural supports melted by the intense energy. Talrix grabbed his command console to steady himself. Half his forward elements were gone. The human ship had destroyed or disabled 16 vessels without taking significant damage. This wasn't a battle. This was a slaughter. "All ships, full combat deployment," Talrix ordered, his voice cracking. "Surround that vessel. Concentrate fire from all directions. It cannot withstand our entire fleet." 50 warships broke formation and accelerated toward the human battleship. They would surround it, pin it in place, and overwhelm it through sheer firepower. No single ship could stand against those odds. Admiral Chen's face appeared on the view screen again. He looked even more tired than before. "You were warned, Commander. You chose this." The human ship didn't try to evade the encirclement. Instead, it did something that made no tactical sense at all. It accelerated directly into the center of the Jothrin formation. It charged toward the mass of warships surrounding it, its weapons firing continuously. "They're insane," someone said on the bridge. "They're committing suicide." But Velik was watching his long-range sensors, and what he saw made his blood run cold. New signatures were appearing at the edge of the system. Big signatures. Many of them. "Commander," Velik said, his voice shaking. "We have a problem. Multiple FTL transitions detected, reading 12 new contacts, all matching the signature of the human battleship." The view screen split, showing the tactical situation. 12 more human warships had dropped out of faster-than-light travel in perfect formation. They were positioned around the Jothrin fleet, creating a sphere of overlapping fire zones. The Indomitable hadn't been alone. It had been bait, and the Jothrin had taken it. The new human ships opened fire simultaneously. The space around the Jothrin fleet filled with railgun slugs and missiles. Energy weapons from the alien ships tried to respond, but the humans had already adapted. Their ships rolled and maneuvered, presenting their thickest armor toward incoming fire. They were built to take damage and keep fighting. Talrix watched his fleet die. He watched ships that had conquered worlds get torn apart by weapons his species had abandoned as primitive. He watched his carefully planned formation collapse into chaos, and he made a decision that no Jothrin commander had ever made before. "All ships," he said, his voice hollow. "Retreat. Emergency jump to hyperspace. Scatter and regroup at Rally Point Theta." The fleet broke and ran. Those ships that could still maneuver jumped to FTL, fleeing the system in random directions. Those that couldn't became targets for the human weapons, dying alone in the void. As Talrix's flagship prepared to jump, Admiral Chen's voice came over every communication channel. "You came looking for an easy conquest. You found a fight instead. Consider this your first and only warning. Stay out of human space." Then the human admiral transmitted something else, a complete data package. Full sensor logs of the entire engagement. Unencrypted. Broadcast on frequencies that would reach every Jothrin world within 100 light years. They wanted the galaxy to know what happened here. They wanted everyone to see. The flagship jumped to hyperspace and the human ships let them go. Velik understood why. Dead enemies couldn't spread the word, but survivors could tell everyone they met about the day the Jothrin Dominion tried to conquer humanity and lost half their fleet to 13 ships. The message was clear. Humanity was not prey. They were predators, and they had just announced their presence to the galaxy. The Jothrin High Council chamber was silent as the combat recordings played for the third time. 17 council members sat in their elevated seats, watching their empire's fleet get destroyed by an enemy they had dismissed as primitive. The images showed everything in brutal detail: ships exploding, hulls being torn apart. The retreat was the worst part. The Jothrin Dominion had never retreated. In 3 centuries of expansion, their fleets had never fled from battle. Until now. How many ships did we lose? Council Prime Drexith asked, though he already knew the answer. 108 confirmed destroyed, the military liaison reported. Another 43 damaged beyond immediate repair. 27 returned to friendly space with moderate to severe damage. Only 36 ships remain combat effective from the original fleet. Drexith felt the weight of those numbers. More than half the expeditionary force gone. Thousands of crew members dead. And for what? Because they had assumed the humans would be easy prey like all the others. We need to understand what happened, Drexith said. Someone explained to me how 13 ships defeated 200 of our finest warships. Junior analyst Velik stood from his seat in the lower chamber. He had been on the flagship during the battle. He had seen everything firsthand. With respect, Council Prime, the humans didn't just defeat us. They were prepared for us. I believe they've been watching the galaxy for decades, studying our tactics and technology. Explain, Drexith commanded. Velik activated a holographic display showing the human battleship. Look at their design philosophy. Our ships prioritize speed, shields, and energy weapons. We've spent centuries perfecting this approach because it works against every species we've encountered, but the humans built their ships to counter our exact strategy. He highlighted the thick armor plating. They don't use energy shields at all. Instead, they use physical armor designed to absorb and dissipate energy weapon fire. Our plasma lances damage them, but not enough. Not nearly enough. The display shifted to show the railgun impacts. Their primary weapons are kinetic, solid projectiles accelerated to relativistic speeds. Our shields are designed to deflect energy, not mass. The tungsten slugs went through our defenses like they weren't there. But kinetic weapons are primitive, one council member objected. We abandoned them because they're inferior to energy-based systems. Inferior against what? Velik asked. Against ships with physical armor, yes. But against ships with energy shields? The humans specifically chose weapons that our defenses couldn't stop. They studied us. They knew exactly what we would bring to the fight, and they built ships to counter it. The chamber fell silent as that reality sank in. The humans hadn't gotten lucky. They had planned this. They had prepared for war with the Jothrin specifically. What about the missiles? Another council member asked. The ones that used nuclear weapons. Velik pulled up the analysis. Nuclear-pumped X-ray lasers. The humans detonate nuclear devices and channel the radiation into focused beams. It's an old theoretical concept, but they've actually built it. The radiation penetrates shields and armor more effectively than our weapons can. So what you're saying, Drexith said slowly, is that the humans studied our technology, identified our weaknesses, and built an entire fleet specifically designed to kill us. Yes, Council Prime. And there's something else. Velik brought up the final part of the combat logs. They let us escape. Look at the positioning. When they jumped in with the additional ships, they had us completely surrounded. They could have destroyed the entire fleet, but they deliberately left gaps in their formation. They wanted survivors. Why would they do that? To send a message. They broadcast the combat logs on open channels. Every species in this region of space probably has a copy by now. The humans wanted everyone to know what happened. They wanted to demonstrate their strength. Drexith stood and walked to the viewing window that overlooked the capital city. Millions of Jothrin citizens went about their lives below, unaware that their empire's reputation had just been shattered. What do we know about human psychology? About their culture? Velik pulled up the intelligence files, limited as they were. Not much, Council Prime. But I've spent the last 3 days reviewing every piece of data we intercepted from their planet. I've studied their historical broadcasts, their entertainment media, their military communications. And I've reached some conclusions. Share them. Humans are persistence predators. They evolved on a high-gravity world filled with large, dangerous animals. They didn't develop speed or natural weapons. Instead, they became the most stubborn species I've ever studied. They hunt by chasing prey until it collapses from exhaustion. They don't give up. They don't surrender. They just keep coming. Velik brought up anatomical data showing human physiology. Look at their bodies. Dense muscle structure, redundant organ systems, high pain tolerance. They're built to take damage and keep functioning. Their ships reflect this biology. They build for endurance, not elegance. And their military philosophy? Drexith asked. Based on their historical records, humans have been fighting wars constantly for their entire recorded history. They fight each other when they don't have external enemies. War is their natural state. And they have a saying that appears repeatedly in their military doctrine. If you're taking fire, you're still in the fight. They don't retreat unless there's no other option. Another council member spoke up. We need to know their fleet strength. How many ships do they have? Unknown, Velik admitted. The 13 ships we encountered could be their entire fleet or just a small patrol group. We have no way to know. But consider this. They sent those ships directly to intercept us. They knew we were coming. They've been monitoring our activities in this region. The council chamber erupted in worried conversation. If the humans had been watching them, studying them, preparing for this moment, what else did they know? What other defenses had they prepared? Drexith raised his hand for silence. We have 3 options. First, we could sue for peace and recognize human territorial claims. Second, we could gather our forces and launch a full-scale invasion with overwhelming numbers. Third, we could avoid human space entirely and pretend this never happened. The third option is impossible, someone said. The entire galaxy knows what happened. Our reputation is already damaged. Then we choose between peace and war. Drexith looked at the frozen image of Admiral Chen on the display. The human looked tired and old, but his eyes were sharp. Those were the eyes of someone who had fought before and won. I need recommendations, Velik stood again. Council Prime, I recommend immediate peace negotiations. We cannot win a war with humanity. That's defeatist talk, a military advisor snapped. One battle doesn't determine a war. We have thousands of ships. We could overwhelm them through sheer numbers. Can we? Velik challenged. Every ship they destroyed cost resources and training to replace. Meanwhile, they can sit in their fortified space and build more of those battleships. And remember, they let us go. They're not afraid of retaliation. They want us to come back with more ships so they can destroy those too and make their point even clearer. He's right, Drexith said quietly. This wasn't a battle to them. It was a demonstration. They were showing us what they can do. He turned to face the council. But we are the Jathran Dominion. We have never surrendered. We have never submitted. How can we negotiate from a position of weakness? With respect, Council Prime, Velik said. We negotiate from a position of survival. Pride won't matter if our fleet is destroyed and our worlds are bombarded. The humans prove they can hurt us. The question is whether we are wise enough to stop before they prove they can destroy us. The debate continued for hours, but Velik could see the reality settling over the council. They could swallow their pride and seek peace, or they could continue the war and risk losing everything. The Jathran Dominion had built its power on conquest and intimidation. But they had never faced an enemy like humanity before, an enemy that had prepared specifically to fight them, an enemy that didn't fear their reputation because they were building their own reputation on Jathran wreckage. In orbit above the council chamber, technicians were already analyzing the combat data, trying to find weaknesses in human ships and tactics. Engineers were rushing to retrofit Jathran vessels with physical armor and kinetic weapons. The entire military was scrambling to adapt to a threat they hadn't seen coming, but Velik knew the truth. The Jathran could adapt. They could change their tactics and technology. But could they match human determination? Could they outlast a species that had evolved to chase its prey until it died of exhaustion? He didn't think so. And he suspected that deep down, neither did the High Council. The war wasn't over yet. But Velik had a terrible feeling that humanity had already won. The combat logs spread across the galaxy like ripples in a pond, reaching every spacefaring civilization within weeks. In diplomatic chambers, military headquarters, and research institutes across dozens of worlds, the footage played over and over. Analysts studied every frame. Military planners rewrote their tactical doctrines. And everyone asked the same question: who were these humans? On the Corvaxian trade world of Nexus Station, Merchant Captain Xyloth watched the recordings with growing excitement. While others saw danger, she saw opportunity. The humans had destroyed a Jathreen fleet using kinetic weapons and nuclear devices. Simple technology by galactic standards, but devastatingly effective. That meant human manufacturing was probably focused on efficiency rather than exotic materials. They would need trading partners. They would need resources, and the Corvaxians were the best traders in the known galaxy. Plot a course for human space, Xyloth ordered her crew. We're going to make first contact before anyone else does. Her second officer looked nervous. Captain, those humans just destroyed 100 warships. What if they attack us? They won't, Xyloth said confidently. Watch the recordings again. They gave warnings. They let survivors escape. They broadcast everything openly. Those aren't the actions of mindless killers. Those are the actions of people who want the galaxy to know they can defend themselves. There's a difference. While Corvaxian merchants prepared their trade missions, the Krill Confederacy took a different approach. In the war halls of their fortress world, Warlord Kraxus studied the human tactics with professional appreciation. The Krill were warriors themselves, respecting strength above all else, and the humans had shown impressive strength. They fight like Krill, Kraxus observed, watching the human ship charge directly into enemy formation. Aggressive, direct, no wasted movement. Their weapons are primitive, his weapons master commented. Kinetic projectiles and fission bombs. We could build similar systems. Then do it, Kraxus ordered. Start immediately. If the humans can shred energy shields with simple mass drivers, we need to adapt and send a diplomatic message to human space. Tell them the Krill Confederacy respects their martial prowess and wishes to establish relations between warrior peoples. The weapons master looked surprised. You want to ally with them? I want to avoid fighting them until we understand them better, Kraxus corrected. They destroyed a Jathreen fleet with 13 ships. How many ships do they have total? What's their full military strength? Until we know these answers, we treat them as potential equals, not enemies. In the crystalline towers of the Luminari Collective, the situation was viewed with scientific fascination. The Luminari were one of the oldest spacefaring races, having achieved interstellar travel millennia before most other species. They had watched civilizations rise and fall, and they recognized patterns that others missed. The humans are survivors, elder researcher Thalen announced to the assembled scientific council. Look at their ship design. Everything is redundant. Multiple armor layers, compartmentalized systems. These ships are built to continue functioning even after catastrophic damage. This tells us about human psychology. They expect to take damage, another researcher said. They plan for it. Most species build ships hoping to avoid being hit. Humans build ships assuming they will be hit. Exactly. And notice their choice of weapons. Kinetic energy and nuclear devices are simple, reliable, and difficult to defend against. They've optimized for effectiveness over elegance. This is a species that values practical solutions over theoretical perfection. Thalen brought up Admiral Chen's image from the combat logs. And look at their commander. He's old. Most species assign young warriors to frontline combat because they're more aggressive. Humans put an experienced elder in command of their most powerful ship. They value wisdom and experience in warfare. Should we be concerned about them? Someone asked. Concerned? No, cautious? Yes. The humans clearly don't start fights, but they're extremely good at finishing them. We should establish diplomatic contact and offer to share scientific knowledge. I suspect they'll be interested in peaceful exchange. But not everyone shared the Luminaries' optimism. On the council worlds of the Jathreen Dominion, rage and shame burned hot. Military commanders demanded revenge. Political leaders called for the humans to be crushed as an example. The debate raged for weeks until finally, High Commander Vexar proposed a solution. We will assemble the largest war fleet in Dominion history, Vexar announced. 300 ships, including the super dreadnought Talon of Dominion. We will bring enough firepower to shatter any defense. The humans humiliated us with their ambush. We will show them what happens when the full might of the Dominion focuses on a single target. Velik, now promoted to senior intelligence analyst, stood to object. High Commander, this is exactly what the humans want us to do. They're goading us into overcommitting our forces. Are you suggesting we do nothing? Vexar's voice was sharp with anger. That we accept this defeat and let the humans mock our weakness? I'm suggesting we seek diplomatic solutions before we lose more ships and more lives, Velik replied. Every analysis I've done suggests we can't win a war of attrition against humanity. They have the defensive advantage, they have weapons specifically designed to counter our technology, and they've shown remarkable tactical flexibility. You sound like you admire them, someone accused. I respect any enemy capable of destroying half our fleet, Velik said bluntly. Respect doesn't mean surrender. It means understanding the threat and responding intelligently. The humans sent us a message with their combat logs. They wanted us to see how they fight. They wanted us to know what we're facing. Ignoring that message would be foolish, but Vexar and his supporters weren't interested in caution. The war fleet began assembling, drawing ships from across Dominion space. The Talon of Dominion, a vessel so large it required a crew of 10,000, would lead the assault. Retrofit programs rushed to add kinetic weapons and heavier armor to Jathrin ships. If the humans wanted to fight with mass and momentum, the Dominion would match them. On Earth, in the headquarters of Terran Defense Command, Admiral Chen reviewed intelligence reports about the Jathrin buildup with his senior staff. Satellite monitoring had detected the fleet gathering. Analysis suggested 300 ships or more. They're coming back, his tactical officer said, and they're bringing everything they have. Chen nodded slowly. We knew they would. Species that build empires on conquest don't handle defeat well. They have to try again or risk looking weak to the rest of the galaxy. Can we stop them? 300 ships is a lot, even for us. We don't have to stop them, Chen replied. We have to make the cost of victory too high to accept. Pull the fleet back to defensive positions around the colonies. Activate all orbital defense platforms. Arm the minefield networks, and prepare the Judgment Protocol. The room went quiet. The Judgment Protocol was humanity's ultimate deterrent. FTL-capable missiles with multi-gigaton warheads, capable of reaching any Jathrin world within days. It was the weapon you revealed only when you were willing to commit to total war. Sir, if we activate that, there's no going back. Someone said. It's escalation to the maximum level. The Jathrin escalated when they assembled a fleet to invade us, Chen said flatly. We gave them a chance to walk away. They're choosing war. So we'll show them exactly what war with humanity means. We'll defend our space, and we'll make it clear that attacking us means risking everything they have. Chen looked at the image of the Jathrin fleet on his display. 300 ships, thousands of crew members, all coming to prove that the Dominion couldn't be beaten by a newcomer species. They still don't understand us, Chen said quietly. They think this is about pride or territory or dominance. They don't realize that for us this is about survival. Humans don't fight to win. We fight so that we can keep existing. And when survival is on the line, we don't hold anything back. He turned to his staff. Send messages to all the species who've contacted us. The Korvaxians, the Krill, the Luminari. Tell them we welcome peaceful contact and trade, but also tell them that anyone who attacks humanity or our allies will face the same response the Jathrin did. We're not conquerors. We're not interested in empire, but we will defend ourselves with everything we have. The messages went out across the galaxy. Humanity's position was clear. They would talk to anyone willing to talk. They would trade with anyone willing to trade, but they would fight anyone who threatened them, and they would fight without mercy or hesitation. The stage was set. The Jathrin war fleet was coming. The human defense fleet was ready, and the entire galaxy was watching to see what would happen when pride met determination in the cold void of space. The Jathrin war fleet emerged from hyperspace at the edge of the Terran colonial sphere, in a display meant to intimidate. 312 warships arranged in perfect formation, with the massive super-dreadnought Talon of Dominion at the center. The ship was a monument to Jathrin power, 5 kilometers long and bristling with enough weapons to level a continent. High Commander Vexar stood on its bridge, confident that this time the outcome would be different. All ships report ready, Commander, his tactical officer announced. Weapons charged. Shields at maximum. New kinetic defense systems online. Vexar nodded with satisfaction. The Dominion had learned from the first engagement. Their ships now carried physical armor plates welded over critical systems. Point defense had been tripled, and most importantly, they had numbers. 300 ships against whatever token force the humans could field. Take us in, Vexar ordered. Battle speed. Show these humans what real power looks like. The fleet advanced, and then the tactical display lit up with red signatures. Velik, standing at his analysis station, felt his stomach drop. He had warned them. He had told them this would happen, but nobody had listened. Contact, the sensor officer reported, his voice shaking slightly. Multiple human battleships detected, counting 50, 100, 150, how many? Vexar demanded. 200 human battleships in defensive formation, Commander, and I'm detecting massive orbital structures behind them. Defense platforms, weapons satellites, and what appears to be an extensive minefield network. Vexar stared at the display. 200 battleships, each one as powerful as the ship that had devastated their first fleet, plus orbital defenses that looked like they could shred anything that got close. The humans hadn't been caught off guard. They had been ready and waiting. They knew we were coming, Velik said quietly. They've been tracking our fleet movements. In the center of the human formation, aboard the repaired TCNS Indomitable, Admiral Chen watched the Jathreen fleet approach on his tactical display. He looked older than he had during the first engagement. More tired, but his eyes were still sharp. Communications. Open a channel to the Jathreen flagship, Chen ordered. Vexar's face appeared on the human view screen. Chen noted the shock poorly hidden behind the alien commander's expression. Good. Let them understand what they were facing. High Commander Vexar, Chen said, his voice calm and professional. You were given a warning. You chose to ignore it. You assembled a war fleet and brought it to our space with the intention of invasion. Before this goes any further, I want you to understand your situation completely. Chen gestured and a tactical display appeared between them, showing both fleets and the surrounding space. You're looking at 200 of our battleships. We have another 100 in reserve. Behind us are orbital fortifications that can sustain bombardment for weeks. The space between your fleet and our defenses is seeded with autonomous mines that can track and engage targets independently. He paused, letting that information sink in. But that's not the important part. The important part is this. Another display appeared showing star charts with multiple Jathreen worlds marked. We have FTL-capable missiles currently in transit to every major population center in Dominion space. Each missile carries a multi-gigaton warhead. They will arrive at their targets in approximately 6 hours. The bridge of the Talon of Dominion erupted in shocked exclamations. Velik closed his eyes, knowing what was coming next. You can attack us, Chen continued, his voice hard. You might even win this battle. Your fleet is powerful, and you have numbers on your side, but even if you destroy every ship here, those missiles will still reach your worlds. Your military might survive. Your empire will not. Chen leaned forward in his chair. Or you can stand down. You can agree to negotiate a treaty, establishing clear boundaries between our territories. You can accept that humanity is not prey, and we will not submit to your expansion. Make your choice, Commander, but make it quickly. Those missiles have a recall code that expires in 30 minutes. Vexar's face contorted with rage. You dare threaten our worlds? You would commit genocide. We would defend ourselves, Chen replied flatly. You came here to conquer or destroy us. We're simply making it clear that we can respond in kind. This isn't about genocide. This is about making you understand that attacking humanity has consequences that extend beyond the battlefield. You're bluffing. No species would actually launch such an attack. Chen's expression didn't change. You're gambling the lives of everyone on your homeworlds on that assumption. Are you that confident? Velik stepped forward, addressing Vexar directly. Commander, request permission to speak. Vexar turned to him, fury evident in his posture. What? They're not bluffing, Velik said urgently. I've studied these humans. When they make a threat, they follow through. They proved that in the first engagement. They said they would destroy our ships, and they did. They're not trying to intimidate us with empty threats. They're offering us a choice between fighting and surviving. We cannot surrender to primitives. Vexar shouted. The Dominion does not negotiate from weakness. Then negotiate from intelligence, Velik shot back. Look at the tactical situation. Really look at it. Even if we win here, we lose our homeworlds. Even if we lose our homeworlds, we devastate our fleet. And for what? To conquer one species that's proven they can hurt us badly? Is your pride worth the destruction of our entire civilization? The bridge was silent. Every officer present knew Velik was right. But admitting it meant accepting something unthinkable. The Jathreen Dominion, conquerors of 17 species brought to negotiation by threats from a species they had dismissed as primitive. Admiral Chen's voice cut through the silence. 25 minutes, Commander. Vexar looked at his fleet, then at the human defenses, then at the star charts showing his threatened worlds. The mathematics were brutal. Even if they won, they lost. The humans had made sure of that. If we negotiate, Vexar said slowly, each word clearly painful, what terms would you demand? Simple ones, Chen replied. Mutual recognition of territorial boundaries. Non-aggression pact. Establishment of diplomatic relations. We're not asking for reparations or submission. We're asking for respect and the right to exist without fear of invasion. And if we agree, you'll recall those missiles? The moment a treaty is signed by both parties, the recall codes will be transmitted. Your worlds will be safe. Vexar looked at Velik. Your assessment analyst, can we trust them? Yes, Commander, Velik said without hesitation. The humans want peace. They've wanted peace from the beginning. But they're prepared for war, and they're very, very good at it. They'll honor any agreement we make. How can you be certain? Because they let us go the first time. They could have destroyed our entire fleet. Instead, they let survivors escape so we could deliver a message. They want the galaxy to know they can defend themselves, but they don't want unnecessary conflict. Everything they've done supports this pattern. Vexar turned back to the view screen, looking at the human admiral. Chen looked tired and old, but not cruel, not bloodthirsty. Just determined. Just ready to do whatever was necessary to protect his people. We will negotiate, Vexar said, the words heavy in his mouth. Send your treaty terms, we will review them and discuss modifications if necessary. Agreed, Chen said. He touched something on his console. Missile recall sequence initiated. Your worlds are safe, Commander. Now let's figure out how to make sure this situation never happens again. The negotiations took 3 days. Both sides made concessions. Humanity agreed to limit their expansion into certain sectors. The Jathreen agreed to recognize human territorial claims and provide compensation for the ships and lives lost in both engagements. Trade agreements were established. Communication protocols were created. And most importantly, both sides agreed to share information about their respective technologies and capabilities, reducing the chance of future misunderstandings. When the treaty was finally signed, transmitted simultaneously to Earth and the Jathreen homeworld, both fleets stood down. The Jathreen fleet jumped back to their space and the human ships returned to their patrol routes. But the galaxy had changed. News of the negotiations spread as quickly as the combat logs had. Humanity had forced the Jathreen Dominion, one of the most powerful empires in the region, to negotiate as equals. Other species took note. The Korvaxians arrived within weeks, eager to establish trade. The Krill sent warriors to exchange military knowledge. The Luminari offered scientific collaboration. Within a year, Earth had formal diplomatic relations with a dozen species. The Terran colonial sphere became known as a place where strength was respected but not worshipped, where negotiation was preferred, but war was not feared. 10 years later, Velik stood in a memorial garden on Earth, looking at a monument listing the names of all those who had died in the first engagement, human names and Jathreen names carved together in stone. Admiral Chen, now retired, approached and stood beside him. I've studied your species for a decade now, Velik said quietly. I still don't fully understand you. What don't you understand? Chen asked. You're warriors. You build weapons that can shatter planets. You fight with determination that frightens other species. But you prefer peace. You negotiate when you could dominate. You could have conquered us after defeating our fleets, but you chose treaties instead. Why? Chen was quiet for a moment, looking at the memorial. Because we know what war costs. Every human alive has ancestors who died in wars. We've fought each other for our entire history. We know that victory in battle doesn't always mean victory in the long term. We know that making enemies is easy, but making friends is valuable. He turned to look at Velik directly. We're persistence hunters, Ambassador. We can chase prey until it collapses. But we're also smart enough to know that sometimes the best way to survive is to have allies instead of prey. The galaxy is big. There's room for everyone. We'd rather spend our energy exploring and building than fighting and destroying. But you're ready to fight if necessary. Always, Chen said simply. We learned a long time ago that hoping for peace while preparing for war is better than hoping for peace and getting conquered. We'll never start a fight, but we'll always be ready to finish one. Velik looked at the memorial again. The Dominion has changed because of you. We no longer assume conquest is our right. Other species have started questioning the old empires. You've changed the galactic order just by existing and refusing to submit. Good, Chen said. Maybe now we can all focus on better things than war. A shuttle passed overhead, carrying diplomats from Earth to a Jathreen delegation meeting. Trade ships from a dozen species moved through the orbital traffic patterns. Human and alien scientists collaborated on research stations. The war was over. The peace was holding. And throughout the galaxy, every species knew the lesson humanity had taught. Respect was not given freely. It was earned through strength, maintained through vigilance, and honored through keeping your word. The humans had earned respect with their battleships. They had maintained it with their defenses. And they had honored it by choosing peace when they could have chosen revenge. The Indomitable, the ship that had started it all, orbited Earth as a museum now. Thousands visited it every day, walking its armored corridors and standing on the bridge where Admiral Chen had faced down an Armada. A plaque near the main entrance read, "First contact, first blood, first respect, 2387. May we never forget the price of peace or the cost of war." Velik touched the memorial stone one last time, then turned to walk with Chen toward the diplomatic center. There was work to do, treaties to refine, relationships to strengthen. The universe was vast and full of unknowns, but at least now humans and Jathreen faced it together as equals rather than as enemies. And that, Velik thought, was worth more than any empire built on conquest could ever be.